Good day, friends. This is the Sports Story, and I'm your host, Michael McMahon. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about the XFL, the great football league that we have to enjoy after the NFL, the XFL, put on by Vince McMahon. And we are at the end of week 4, looking on into week 5 coming up. And I didn't get a chance to do a podcast for week 3 last week, but I wanted to be able to get the week 3 MVP out as I'm keeping track, and I use it as kind of who's my current MVP of the league and who will be my MVP at the end of the year, because sometimes these football leagues, they don't get it right. And the NBA doesn't get it right sometimes. The NFL doesn't get it right sometimes. The XFL, we'll see if they'll get it right, but I'm going to go and say that they probably won't. And so I'm going to use my MVPs to be more of a consistent line and actually have a little bit of sense made into it. With that being said, the week 3 MVP, this high honor goes to PJ Walker out of the Houston Roughnecks. He had 306 passing yards, 64 rushing yards, so on the scramble, helping his team in the air and on the ground. Higher level than any other quarterback of week 3. Jordan Ta'amu, he was pretty close in terms of production and helping his team win. And Cam Phillips, he's the wide receiver for the Houston Roughnecks, and he always has good numbers through these 3 weeks because he just gets delivered dimes by PJ Walker. So it's hard to give Cam Phillips, even though he has the 3, the 5, the 2 touchdowns. He always is making those big catches, but that wouldn't all happen if it wasn't for all the attention that is needed to contain a guy like PJ Walker, easily the Lamar Jackson of this league, with the athleticism and also the ability to throw, and just kind of just an all-around dominator of an XFL football game. That being said, we didn't really see PJ Walker peak this week, going into week 4. And it was kind of a drop-off that we seen in his performance. And he had the 2 touchdowns still, but he threw an interception. And if it wasn't for the Renegades having such a bad day in terms of their quarterback, he threw 3 interceptions in the first quarter. So that already should have had the Houston Roughnecks up a ton of points, but they weren't really able to capitalize on most of those interceptions that the defense got. And to throw it worse, when the game was pretty close, as it ended 20-27 for the Roughnecks, PJ Walker's interception just came at such a bad time that if the Renegades, if they weren't having issues at the quarterback position and were able to capitalize on that interception, they might have walked away with this game. And Landry Jones, he started this game, and how he started this game was obviously terrible. 3 interceptions in the first quarter. He kept getting sacked, and the pressure was really put on them by the Roughnecks, and it ended up him getting so battered up that he ended up getting injured. So unfortunately, we're not going to see Landry Jones for probably the next couple weeks, I would assume. As they've said, actually, 2 to 3 weeks is his expected recovery time for a knee injury. But the takeaway from this game is, should we be worried about PJ Walker kind of declining, throwing an interception, getting kind of loose with it? And it's no. You shouldn't be worried. I think he's still going to be the overall MVP of the XFL going throughout this season. And I see the Roughnecks winning a really close game against St. Louis Battlehawks. and Jordan Ta'amu, I see them having a really great game for the rest or for the XFL championship game. So don't be worried. Take it as it was a bad game for PJ Walker, and their team still got to win. So that shows that Patrick Mahomes, he sometimes can have bad games and sometimes even loses games. He wasn't undefeated last year or the year before that. So bad games happen. And just a look, he plays the Seattle Dragons next week, Roughnecks versus Seattle Dragons. And so look for them to really tune some things up against a much weaker defensive opponent. And a team I am worried about is the DC Defenders. They play the Tampa Bay Vipers, and the Tampa Bay Vipers is my worst team in the XFL. Even with this 25-0 dominant win against the Defenders, I still don't see it. Taylor Cornelius for them has really stepped up, and 6'4", threw 211 yards and a touchdown, one interception, but a 92% passer rating. So staying cool and calm at home, making sure to hit his targets. 24 out of 31. That's pretty accurate as well. And that praise, even though it's not much, even that little bit can't be said about Cardell Jones and the DC Defenders' performance. Didn't even put up a point, obviously, and it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable of this XFL team to be this bad, because we need some sort of consistency, and it's hard for the DC fan base to gather around this. And maybe it's because of the fan base. As we know, even from week 1, Washington hasn't really put on for the team, and going home, even worse, they can't perform because they have zero support. And you would think that they would be used to having no support because of the conditions of the FedEx Field in Washington, because there's not a whole lot of fans that show up to it. So they should be able to perform just as well on the road, but obviously road trip woes for the Defenders and Cardell Jones. He actually got benched in the last 4 minutes of the game. So it's going to be interesting. And a big shout out for a Tampa Bay Viper, the running back, Jaquez Patrick. His dad passed away, and they had this funeral service on Friday, but he was still there Sunday night to be able to play in this game. So very emotional week for him, and he got his first XFL professional touchdown. So saw some emotion, and you just saw another reason why I'm kind of sucked into the XFL, as now we're getting a little bit more personable with the players. Some of the players' names are starting to stick. I'm able to say a player's name and not have to look them up or be able, I just know who they are. So with this XFL growing from week 1, so is my knowledge of the players, and it's just making it that much more fun to follow. So I hope that you guys are following along as well. And one thing that, for me, with kind of those facts out of the way, is I went and looked at the standings, and with the DC Defenders playing like this, they are slowly losing that second seed in the East. The Guardians and Vipers are two teams that started off slow as we're coming up to the halfway point of the XFL, but they're now kind of turning on those burners and beating the teams, winning the games that they need to win, taking advantage of the easier teams. And that being said, the Guardians, they got a win against the LA Wildcats. That was kind of a close game throughout, but thankfully to a fourth quarter field goal by the New York Guardians, were able to secure that win over the LA Wildcats. So both of these teams are really looking to get that 2 seed, because the St. Louis Battlehawks, as I said, already locked up the first seed. And it's not necessarily locked up, as anything could happen, but my hypothesis on it is that first seed's locked up to the Battlehawks, and there's an actual race in the East for that second seed that makes kind of this interesting, and we'll see as we go more out through the weeks that are coming. And that all being said, that should brings us into our last and final game of the week that I want to cover, and it was the St. Louis Battlehawks versus the Seattle Dragons. And Jordan Ta'amu, his fingerprints were all over this game. He won the Week 4 MVP spotlight as well. That being said, he had 264 yards, 1 touchdown, and relied heavily on his arm for this game. And the team relied on the arm because Seattle, they had pretty good defense and definitely made Jordan Ta'amu and the St. Louis Battlehawks earn this win. And it made me really happy to see the Dragons perform this well against the St. Louis Battlehawks, because it was a pretty close win. It was a very close game that Jordan Ta'amu, again, obviously played well. And the reason why Jordan Ta'amu gets this over PJ Walker or any other, or Taylor Cornelius, because not only did they throw interceptions, and even though they came out with wins, they just didn't look confident. They didn't look like they had their best games. And Jordan Ta'amu, somebody who I would compare to Marcus Mariota or Justin Herbert, as he has a coach that coaches a very fast-paced offense, and Jordan Ta'amu, very quick with the RPOs, very good with the throwing the ball down long and giving his wide receivers a chance to make a play. And that's something we see with Justin Herbert, especially coming out of Oregon, is he's willing to take that risk to throw an interception, as he sometimes does, and it sometimes is not to the benefit of the team. But when those plays do happen and he connects with his wide receivers because he's given them a chance, it's special, and it gives the team a boost, and it gives them a really, really good rush to win the rest of the game and to keep the momentum on their side. And as I was saying, I had to look up this score, but they beat the Seattle Dragons 16-23. And again, the Roughnecks versus Renegades. The Renegades are the second seed in the West, and the Roughnecks are the first seed. So you kind of expected a pretty close score, 27-20, but the Renegades definitely didn't perform to their seeding, and the Roughnecks didn't perform to their seeding either, to make it, like I said, a very sloppy game. But Jordan Ta'amu and the Seattle Dragons, they were just playing really good football. I want to say both Seattle Dragons were playing good football. I think Seattle Dragons found their quarterback for the future, BJ Daniels. And I'm very excited because I think Brandon Silvers, he had his turn, and Jim Zorn, I think he realizes that the team's not going anywhere under Brandon Silvers. Give BJ Daniels a fair shot. At least give him a start and see what he does in Week 5 against the Houston Roughnecks, because that's honestly a game that I believe the Seattle Dragons are going to lose. And the next week, though, against LA Wildcats and then New York Guardians, those two games, I believe we have a very good shot at getting some momentum going, and hopefully the Renegades start slipping with this injury to Landry Jones, and maybe the Seattle Dragons can make a rush to that second seed spot. And that's pretty much the show for today. Again, Week 4 MVP, Jordan Ta'amu. Very, very great. 20 for 27. I'm pretty sure I said that, but just very accurate, very great quarterback, and a very good team, St. Louis Battlehawks. And I want to shout out my social medias, Facebook, The Sports Story, Twitter, @MichaelMcMahon1 or The Sports Story. But But either way, I hope you all have a good night, friends.